Well, hello, good evening, and welcome. Tonight we've got I think we've got a really cracking broadcast for you. I've got two good pals on the line. Not only the pals, but they are phenomenal leaders. Different styles, crazy guys, but brilliant. And we've got Rod Bowden on. Rod and his good lady Jackie have been with us for a period of time. I know Rod's had a really stressful occupation. This business has allowed him to dump that stressful organisation. They've created more than 10,000 group customers, and they're very busy with family as well. And Derek Thomas we have on here. Derek has also left a very stressful occupation, now full-time in this. Generated a great group that's generated more than 17,000 group customers. David and I have just spent time in Cardiff doing a breakthrough event, and David's been doing some coaching work down there as well, and we've had an absolute blast. They're both fascinating people. They've both got brilliant stories. So without further ado, I think I'd like to kick off with Mr. Rod Bowden. Rod, over to you.
Good evening, Clive, and good evening, everyone. It's great to be invited to join you. As Clive said, that we joined the business some years ago, Jackie and I. At the time, I was an independent financial advisor, and I was just fascinated by the concept of network marketing. And I've been looking for some time for something like utility warehouse, or telecom plus as it was called in those days. And I just felt that I could help my clients save some money. That was the thing with the services. So we joined, and it wasn't easy to earn money in the early days because there was no customer gathering bonus, and all we got was the commission on the calls, and we didn't do much else other than telephone calls. In fact, we didn't even do local calls when we first started. But we gathered quite a lot of customers in the early days, and the business took off. I was an independent financial advisor, as Clive said, and I hadn't realised. I thought I coped with stress quite well, but I wasn't. And about 7 years ago, I discovered that I'd had a heart attack. I was very lucky. It was a very mild one. I didn't know about it until afterwards, when the doctor told me I'd had one, and he could see it on the ECG. And that was when I decided, well, I don't need that stress. Fortunately, and I've become famous for an old Arab saying, which is, don't wait until you're thirsty to dig your well. And of course, I've been digging my well for some years, and when I became thirsty, I was able to go to drink from it. And Jackie, my good lady, has been drinking from it on a daily basis since. But it's been a great business for us, and it's enabled us to do many things. And one of our children, we have 5 children. We've got 10 grandchildren, 2 great grandchildren. So we're very family orientated. And this business has enabled us to visit our daughter who emigrated to Canada a few years ago. So we go 2 or 3 times a year to Canada, spend time over there, and we still get paid. And guess what? Our pay actually goes up every month as well, and that's rather nice. It's also enabled me to get involved in some voluntary work. I don't think even Clive knows this, but I sit on the local authorities fostering panel. I also sit on the adoption panel for the 2 local authorities that are up here in North Wales, and that enables me to give something back and helping children that are taken into care. I'm also a magistrate, a justice of the peace, and I've done that for some 10 years. And that's only because the money from Telecom Plus has enabled us to free us up to do things like that. So it's a brilliant business.
Well, that's absolutely incredible, Rod. If I may, I'd like to ask you one particular question, because
sure.
You mentioned before that you were kind of looking for, something like this. Have you had some networking experience before you got involved with this?
I had, Clive, yes. I'd had 2 previous businesses that I joined. I did my networking degree, if you like, in Amway. I did Amway for 3 years, and we got to a reasonable pin level over a period of time and made no money whatsoever. In fact, when I did my accounts, it turned out that I actually lost close to £15,000 over the 3 years if I took into account all the events that we've been to, books and tapes and everything else. But we learned so much about the business. It was brilliant.
So just let me get that right. You said you actually got to a reasonable pin level, 3 years hard work, and made a loss.
We did. And one of the things that really annoyed me was the amount of money that the leadership were earning from what they called the books and the tapes, and there was a business behind the business. And in fact, Amway was stopped trading a few years ago for 12 months by the Board of Trade in the UK because they also looked on it as being not a real business. The real money was being made by these books and tapes. And I kept asking my upline, I said, if the tapes and the books are for the good of the people, why are the tapes, in those days, I think they were about £3 each. I said, because you can actually reproduce a tape for 50p. If they're for the good of the people, why aren't they being done at cost?
Okay. So the other thing too, the other thing too that I just wanted to get to is I remember meeting you and Robin at a hotel
in Chester.
That's right, in Chester.
Yeah.
And we had lunch and we started talking about Telecom Plus, and I basically I pitched you guys. And if I remember rightly, I drew out the marketing plan on the back of a napkin. I seem to remember.
Yep.
What attracted you into the business then?
Well, probably the principal thing was that I didn't have to have any stock. It didn't involve me in once we got a customer on board for the services. It didn't mean I had to go back to that customer to sell them more stuff the next month or the month after, because that was the one thing I found hard. As an independent financial advisor, I felt my credibility was a little bit put at risk.
Okay, I get that. So, Derek, let's hear your story, please. I know that you come to this full-time path in a kind of a different route to Rod. Derek.
Yes, Clive. Good evening, everyone. Delighted to be with you this evening. Yeah, I'm some sort of teaching background. A lot of people don't really they think I joke about this, but I would be what you call a classic slow learner. It's always taken me a while to pick up things, but once I get them, once I get the skill, I am a bit like a Rottweiler. I won't let go of it. And I come from a sort of an athletic background. I used to do a lot of running, distance running, marathon running, and there's a little clue in there because I'm one of these stubborn people who never give up. And once I got my head around this opportunity, because it took me about 3 years before I really understood it, I finally picked up the skills required to build the business. But it took me a long time to get my head around. I mean, I think it was 3 years before I got to TL in the business. And really, it was a financial situation that I was put in, where you will know these, Rod, endowment policies. I bought into a policy which wasn't doing very well. It was national, wasn't it, the endowment policy? And just looking for something to really cover those costs, the shortfall, actually. And I recall actually I was invited to a place in Newport, and I walked into this hotel, and there was this rather sort of elegant, handsome, well-spoken gentleman.
Me then?
No, it wasn't you, Clive. It was Rod. It was Rod Bowden.
Sorry, Clive. It was me.
And I sat down and listened to Rod, and I remember just saying to myself, look, this guy sounds really, really authentic, this is, when you buy into the idea was there, but definitely first impressions do go a long way, and I think that was a little clue for anybody when they're talking or introducing people to the business. What you say in those first 20 minutes or so really, really is important. And to be credible and to be honest and open with people, I think people buy into that. But the system, I'm quite used to following systems. When I was training for my running, you follow a system. There's the distance run, the short hill sprints you do, and then the stretching and the gym work is a system that will guarantee you some good results. And this is what I got into, because I think I got into a system where we picked up something. We were doing letterboxing, and for all sakes and purposes, I was doing some ridiculous returns on these letterboxing. I was delivering something like 250 letters from 6 o'clock in the morning to about 8:30 every day in the week for a whole year. And this is ironic because although it was a good system that worked, and I was able to do that, I did it for a year. I'm probably bringing in about 25 customers per month. That would go down really well today, wouldn't it? If you were bringing in 25 gold customers a month. But these were the little piggy boxes. And people who were trying out these boxes said, well, actually, we'd like to have a go. I think we hit 200 plus club in that period. So I hit over 200 customers in the first year as well. So it was massive activity. But the irony of it, and the people who actually joined, Neil Johnson, I knew Neil from the local church when I arrived in college as a student. So I knew him already. I knew Karen Morgan, who responded to one of my letters, because she was in college with me at the teacher training college. And it's incredible, isn't it? That massive activity for a whole year actually delivered me to people I already knew. So there's a sort of something we can learn there, isn't there? Because we know now it's easier to hit a hot list rather than or a warm list than doing all that massive activity. And there's not many people.
Derek, can I ask you,
Sorry?
were they on your list at all?
Were they on my list? No, they weren't on the list. In fact, I didn't have a list. I told you I was a slow learner at the beginning.
Okay.
I was throwing out packs to the free ads. I was putting in £1 a pack. I was putting in Clive's audio. I was putting in all the information and posting these off. And I spent, the first couple of years, as you mentioned earlier, Rod, spending money. So I say this because I want people to learn from my mistake. And I truly believe, that doing things right with your warm list will give you great returns. And
I'm flabbergasted to hear that. I mean, thank you very much for sharing this, Derek, because I've never heard that detail from you before, and I've known you for a long time now, because it's so different to how I imagined that you got started in this business.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get to think that everybody kind of starts in the same way, don't you?
Yeah.
When Guy and I, when we walked out of that pub in Henley-on-Thames, having been shown it, and Diana saying you're doing it, sort of thing, and on the way we were driving back to Manchester, Di had the journal open and a pen, and as we were driving back to Manchester, we were making a list between us. She was scribbling the names down as we were both driving along and discussing how we were going to tackle these people and how we were going to approach it. So I'm just amazed. Anyway, I'm sorry, Derek, I interrupted you. Please carry on.
But I think there is a stubbornness about me, because I don't think many people would have gone through all of that if they didn't know what the result was going to be. I mean, the result has been very, very favourable for me, because in the long way I've got back. Neil Johnson has built a fantastic SGL business. Karen Morgan's built up a fabulous SGL business and both have got SGLs coming through now. And also the third leg that I developed was someone that we spent money with, the guy who actually ran a gardening centre that Angela bumped into and started to chat to him. So little clues here coming in that there's a better way to our market than all this mass mailing. And from that point onwards, the importance of the list then became more and more prevalent to me, and I started to teach that. I mean, looking back in hindsight now, when you're working with your new IDs, the importance of their list and the right approach. I was talking yesterday in Birmingham. We were doing an accelerator up there, and we were just talking about how to approach that really hot list, that warm list, with the why you are doing the business. And I was always a little bit sort of didn't have a real, apart from paying off the endowment, didn't have a real powerful why, I think, when I was going to my warm list. So I sort of kept things a bit like a secret agent. I was working, or I didn't want school to know I was doing extra work in things, and in case they would look down and say, you should be focused on what you're doing within school. But my mindset has changed around now, and And I think, with colleagues in work who are really struggling with the pressures and the stress and the paperwork and the pressures of increasing targets. We're losing sight of children in school. It's all about data, and it's all data driven. What a fabulous reason to go to your nearest and dearest and say, I've been moaning and I've been so miserable every day coming home from work. Well, I've decided to do something about it. And what I've decided to do is set up a part-time business that has got fantastic benefits in it for people. Let me pop around and show you what I'm doing. So when that head teacher arrives and he meets with his nearest and dearest, they're not shocked when he tells them that he's found a fabulous way of generating some income.
Because he's decided to do something different.
Absolutely. So in hindsight, looking back, I've made the mistakes, and Clive, we've all made the mistakes. And I think the important thing is that our teams learn from the mistakes that we've made. And that's why I wanted to share that with you tonight.
Well, Derek, thank you for that. If I may interject, because we've actually already had a couple of questions come in on the questions and answers app. For those of you that need to access this, you do need to be logged into your Google Plus account. It does work on a laptop and on a desktop. I think you'll struggle with a tablet. And a couple of things that we just picked up from this, well, one in particular was a question from Susie Raja. And rather with talking about Susie's specific questions, she's asking about the letter system. I think we need to explain that the letter system that you referred to, Derek, was something that happened in the past.
Yeah.
And probably in today's marketplace wouldn't be terrifically acceptable. But it's not like the neighbourhood letters, for example, is it?
No.
If I could say something on that, Clive, because
please do.
We were active with the letterbox system as well at the same time as Derek was. I mean, it did bring a lot of customers in, but they were mainly single service customers, and it was almost as if somebody turned a switch off. It suddenly stopped working because people were getting so much direct mail from other companies as well that they just stopped opening the letters.
Yeah,
we found that the response rate over a 3-month period, the response rate suddenly dropped off the cliff.
Yeah, absolutely. It just kind of everybody was getting direct mail from all that sort of stuff as well. So it's just. I
mean, we actually signed in 1 month. We actually signed 99 customers in 1 month as a result of that letterbox system.
Okay, well let's just look at a couple of other issues. Whilst we're getting some of these questions just filtering through, if you have any questions, please, now is the time to start typing them and put them in the questions and answers app. I've got a really interesting question here from Lucy Patterson. Good evening, Lucy. Lucy's question is, she's really struggling with getting people to events. Any tips? Who'd like to go first on that one? I'm deafened by the silence. Okay.
Well, do you want to take this, or do you want me to mention?
You go for it, Derek.
Okay. Events. I firmly believe that when people realise the power of events, and the methods of getting people to those events, I would tell you one of my top leaders who had been to an event, and I'd invited him a second time to the event, and he said, well, I don't need to go because I went last year, and completely missed the point. And the activity of people who go to events, you can actually see who's been to an event and who hasn't. And I think it was Eric talks about the intonation in the voice when you're putting those invites out. There is no point inviting people to an event by an email or by a voicemail or by a text. These things have got to be done over the phone, and the intonation in the voice about whatever you do, just put aside. And I think one of the things about events is that people, as long as you plan ahead for them, they can't excuse if that's in the diary ahead. If we know when the next our January seminars is 17th of January, so that will be in people's diaries. So you would expect that in their diaries to keep reminding them of those events. Otherwise, they find a loophole that suddenly someone is actually going to have a party on that day, or someone to decide they're visiting an aunt. So I think we need to establish. There's a key thing of, with your team, establishing where these main events are occurring, and to get them to put them in and agree. And I tend to sort of start with a new idea, and I said, look, there are 4 or 5 key events a year, and if I'm going to help you, would you commit to those events, because it will aid in terms of growth of your business? And we write them in the diary. You know my work with the diary; everything is diarised. And also, I think, as Eric talks about, doesn't he? He talks about $1,000, but really your team is the size of the number that you have at the next event. So if someone may have, I don't know, 200 ID or 50 IDs, and only 10 are booked into the next event, that is the size of your team, 10 people, because you know what's going to happen after that event. Those 10 are going to be doing the work. The others are going to be missing out. So I think there's little clues in terms of, I know sometimes it's sort of bottle feeding babies sometimes, but helping to get people together, organising cars, encouraging them to share lips and things like that, where they're involved and they're given specific activities to do within that group. Yeah, I mean, it's always the case. They need to be promoted. And we talk about
a
professional will promote. The best promoter of events I know in this business is Stefan Longworth.
Yeah, absolutely. Rod, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Stefan's book, The Impact System, he's written some in there. Steph is an absolute past master at inviting people to events, and it's all about raising the expectation, building it, telling them how important it's going to be to their business. If they're serious about this business, they need to be there, and just not allowing any room for any excuses. I think you've got to drive them to it.
I mean, the information that comes from the event, we know there's going to be fabulous information at MAD. Okay, maybe we imply that we know exactly the detail. We don't know the detail. Only a special few know that. But when you're promoting that, the intonation in your voice is such that you need to be there. The information they're going to share with you at MAD, okay, I can't tell you what that is, okay, because it's a secret. I mean, you don't know yourself, but I can't tell you that because it's a secret. But that information will set you 6 months ahead of the pack.
It's called advanced information.
Yeah.
It's called, if you want to get ahead in this business, you need to be there. What you need to do, whatever you can to do to be there. I was having a conversation with Eric Warwick when we were in Mexico with him, and he drew a rectangle which was kind of like an auditorium, and divided. In fact, let me just do this, if I can do this real quick. If that is the auditorium, and the squiggle at the top of the page is the stage, okay? So, and let's say we've got people here, okay? And in the first year, the arena is full, both sides of the aisle. In the second year, these people, this is, the national seminar, those people that have School of Lions do, they don't turn up, they're replaced. But the people on this side of the page, their income is now twice the average of anybody else in the room. And then in the third year, what happens is these people here, they don't go. They're replaced. But these people here, their income is now 3 times the average. And then it goes on and on and on. So these people now, their income is 4 times the average, and these people are replaced. That is that's exactly what happens, because there's actually been some analysis done on this, and it's true. It actually happens. And here's the kicker: if you miss a year, you start all over again.
Yeah.
So
the monetary value, Clive, and I think Eric talks about $1,000, but if you say every person you get to Express Day annually is worth £500 to your business, and if people want to work out how many people they had Express Day and what they earned annually from this business, the maths is uncanny. So when you're making that call's worth £500 to you. to get them to mad or to get them to express day, how much more, if there's 500 quid on it, is that worth a text, or is it worth actually meeting them face to face? You know, that's the difference, isn't it? Working on that one-to-one or over the phone, at minimum over the phone. But yeah.
Okay, let's just move on a little bit. I've got Rod. I need to ask you a question because we've got just about 5 minutes left. We might overrun. We'll see how we get on. New people coming into the business. Okay. Yeah. Before we went live on air, we were talking about some strategies to help new people. Just run through one or two things that you guys are doing with your team, and then I'll come to Derek for the same sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we welcome everybody new that joins the team. We try and find out a little bit about them, what it is that they're doing, what their why is, why did they join the business, what they expect to get from it, and it's also useful to be able to get and find out from them exactly how much time they're anticipating to put into the business, how much time they're going to put on one side, because we need to know how serious they are about working this business. We also do then is we actually help them build their list, because the list is absolutely paramount.
Now, when you say,
they're not going to go anywhere without, and as Derek talked about this earlier.
Yeah, well, but when you say you help them with your list, okay?
Yeah.
How do you actually? What's the mechanics? What do you actually do with that?
Okay. Well, we'd sit down with them and say, right, who do you know that's entrepreneurial? Who do you know that would like to earn more money this year than they did last year? Who do you know who came to your wedding? And actually help them to construct. It's a little bit of what they do in College of Excellence as well, in terms of constructing the list. It's a little bit of Eric Worre from GoPro, using his prompt list, and using the mnemonic frogs, friends,
recreation, occupation,
geographic, and similar name, and so on.
Yeah.
But unless you actually hold people's hands to do that, their list won't be very big. The problem you have then is if their list isn't very big, they're frightened to talk to a few people, because if you've got somebody who's got a list of 20 names and they ring 10 of them and they get a negative response, they suddenly think, well, that's it, I can't work this business. The 10 people I thought were going to do it aren't going to do it. I've only got 10 more, and they sit back and just don't do anything. If you've got somebody to 500 or 600 or 700 names, and you can do that, they reckon most 21-year-olds know 1,000 people. So if you can get 500 or 600 names on the list, it doesn't matter if 10 people say no, because there's plenty more to go at.
Yeah, I mean, I had a situation recently where a guy said to me, "Oh, I don't know anybody." I said, "Really?" I said, "You on Facebook?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "How many friends you on Facebook?" He said, "Oh, about 700."
Yeah.
But there is a memory jogger for the guys who are watching the broadcast tonight. If you go to facebook.com/Leach Ross and look in the tools and resources, there is a definite area for that. This is the URL here, facebook.com/Leach Ross, and there's a resource archive for this. Derek, what would you add to that?
Well, I've just hang on, Clive. Let me just think. Your box has just popped up in front of me here. What we do then is, once we've got the list, we've been working on an interesting project. It's something that I was planning to do in October, but David had been across to work with Eric Worre, and it's these mini burst sessions where we're grouping. Karen's team had 20 together on this. I had another group in our house with about 8 people together. Now, I tell you what we did in our 8, and then if you think about double that figure, that happened with Karen, because they had 20 there. We had our lists. We came in with our lists. We paired up into different rooms in the house, and the stopwatch went, and we for a whole hour we just called alternate. So we sat with our partners and we made a call, and then our partner made a call, and it was a bit backwards and forwards back, because you are then responsible to your partner. So if your partner's ready, so while he's on the call, you're getting ready the next number to go. And a strange thing happened, because many of us who are used to calls, on my list there, I had people that I'd been putting off, and not for just a week, not for just a month, but there was someone on my list there that I had on there a year ago. I just didn't feel like calling him. I thought he'd be hard work. In fact, he wasn't hard work. In fact, he was looking forward to meeting me next week. But the stats on this, and I'll confirm the one that I added to it today, out of the group made 112 calls. We have in the diary 39 appointments, and I don't know all the callbacks and the others, but 39 appointments. So working with a group of people for 1 hour, 8 people on our team for 1 hour, is put 39 appointments in the diary over the next couple of weeks. And that was very exciting for some of the team. And I know that there were 88 appointments in Karen's group. So if you think about the activity that's been generated, it's been really successful. But it does rely on having that list there. And I think also you've got everyone working in a team. And it's a bit of fun as well, because we come back with the stats afterwards and people get excited by what's happened. And what has happened really is something that is very simple that we're all told to do in the College of Excellence training. They get 5 minutes to make some calls, but people go to the toilet, they haven't got their phone, the signal's not very good, or they may be having their lunch, because we all procrastinate, don't we? And this was a really, really good session.
Derek, excuse me interrupting you, but I do have something I was going to say about procrastination, but I'll do it tomorrow.
Okay.
I've got a question here from another great leader in the business, from Paul Robinson. Hi, Paul. Thanks for the question. And his question is, hi, gents. What's the biggest mistake you see new IDs making? And I think this will have to be our last question. So, first of all, Rob, what's the biggest mistake you see new IDs making?
I think the biggest mistake of all, Clive, is that they don't get going, hitting the ground running. I've seen it happen so many times, because the excitement does drop off, and they need to harness that excitement when they first join the business, and that enthusiasm, because as Steph says, it's the what is it? Not knowledge on ice is nowhere good as enthusiasm on fire, and certainly if people are excited, they can achieve so much more. Instead of waiting until they feel that they've got all the knowledge that they need about the business. Because I think it's excitement that can get people in.
Derek, what will you add to that?
I would say people who come into this business who are not sure why they're doing it. I think the biggest mistake I see, where they come in, they think they're moving a product, and they don't realise why they're moving a product. Because by moving that product, what is it going to deliver to them and their family? What's the impact of that going to be? I've got some head teachers who are in at the moment, and some are doing this and some aren't. But the ones who are actually telling their close family and friends, I'm stressed to hell, and I've decided to do something different. I've set up a little business which is going to actually bring my retirement forward. I know a colleague of mine has just actually done that and brought it 16 years forward. That's a powerful message. And they don't get mixed up. The close family and friends are not sort of scratching their heads wondering why they're offering them discounts on their utilities. So why they're doing the business, I think, is absolutely crucial for people, and knowing that, because that's going to drive them. That's going to keep them in and not want them to give up too soon.
Thanks, Derek. And gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed. If I just may add to that answer for Paul Robinson, I've covered quite a lot of this in, I think it was the first and second broadcast we did, which is in the library. You'll be able to get details of those episodes on this URL here, the Leach, facebook.com, Leach Ross. And I'd just like to end up by saying thank you very much indeed, Derek and Rod. It's been an absolute pleasure having you online tonight. I think we've got some great stuff out of that and some great content. Next Sunday, of course, we've got MAD. So there'll be no broadcast, I'm sorry, next Sunday, because we'll be MAD. But the following Sunday, we're going to have something really, really good. We've got Mark and Angela D'Souza, who have built, in a relatively short period of time, an exciting group that's created more than 10,000 group customers. And Kevin Hunt, who lives in East Anglia, where it's a big empty area of not an awful lot. But you know,
does this work in East Anglia, Clive?
it works in East Anglia. Kevin has got a group that's generated more than 30,000 group customers.
32.
It's 32,000. Sorry, I've just been corrected. It's 32,000 group customers. So,
But nobody knows.
but nobody knows about it. Nobody's ever heard of Kevin Hunt. We have. He's famous for two things. He is an excellent drummer and an awful musician. So we'll have those two on, and they're going to be not next Sunday, the Sunday after. I shall be posting the information on the Facebook channel and through Google Plus before a long time, and that's really it for this week. So if you have been, we hope that you've really enjoyed it. I've certainly really enjoyed having these two guys on with me, and we'll see you next time. So
thank you, Clive. Goodbye, everybody.
Okay. See you all in MAD.
Okay.
Bye, Derek.
Bye for now. Bye bye.